Thor: The Dark World is the second of the Thor movies. It feels like it lost something in the translation. And from what I have read and watched, many of the things that made the movie not as good, well, there's a reason. The basic story of this movie is like this. There are these dark elves that the Asgardians fought thousands of years ago and defeated. The Asgardians took their power, the ether, and hid it someplace, forever assuming that the dark elves were destroyed, never to return. Now Jane, Thor's love interest, finds this aether and weird things on Earth, and that means that the dark elves are indeed returning. So it's up to Loki and Thor to work together to try to stop these elves from destroying everything. There are definitely a lot of mediocre things about this movie, but there are ever some great things about it. Let's find out why. Okay guys, this movie does have some underwhelming things. For one thing, the CGI, there's a lot of CGI. They spent a lot of time in Asgard, and it's a lot of CGI. It's very dark CGI, drab, blah, looks very cartoony. Secondly, we have Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth. The character in the first one was he had to learn his lesson, lose his power, return, yada yada yada. In this one, he is Thor, the manly Thor, and he's very generic hero type. He's very kind of flat. In fact, in an interview, Chris Hemsworth stated that it was very boring to play this version of Thor. It bored him to death. The other thing, the dark elf that is the villain, he seemed kind of weak. He didn't seem that impressive. Someone that Thor could easily defeat, to me. Like, he'd throw things, Thor's like, whatever, just kind of routine, kicking his rear end. Interaction between Loki, Tom Hiddleston, and Thor, Chris Hemsworth, those interactions were really funny / more developed and cool, and I really thought that was improved quite a bit from the earlier one, and you can see that was the core of something that would grow later on. On that aspect, they both did a really good job on the interaction and the dialogue between them, and I'm so glad that they are using Tom Hiddleston and the Loki character and expanding on it. That was something they didn't really do before, and now they're exploring more with this show, Loki, the TV show on Disney+. So I'm so glad that they're doing that. I'm very excited about that. Fun fact, guys, Joss Whedon was brought in at the end, or at some point in the movie, to come and save the dialogue between Thor and Loki. It was drab and blah, and he came in and saved it. So actually you can thank him for that. A tool that I think I learned from this movie is connected to the Chris Hemsworth situation. He said during an interview that the Thor that he had to play in this one was so boring and so drab he can't even stand watching it. He's like, ugh, so boring to play, so boring to watch. He did not like it at all. I put myself in his situation. I thought, my gosh, so I signed a contract with Marvel. How many movies do I have to make and I have to play this friggin' character? Seems like a horrible situation. I'm sure it's just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But in the end, it ended up being a really positive thing because he ended up sharing that with the director in the future who did Thor Ragnarok. And those directors and writers said, dude, yeah, let's redo Thor. Let's start from scratch again. And so that's why you get a much more humorous, fun, enjoyable Thor that I really like a lot now. More friendly, not so drab. So my point is, more often than not in my life, something that I think is so horrible in the moment, there's some kind of thing making me have to force a change or something. At some point down the line, I look back and say, boy, I'm sure glad that happened. But I think it's important in the situation when I'm in a situation of that I'm happy with my job or something to say, well, you know what? Just go with it. If I need to change, I'll change. Maybe the universe is telling me that I need to change something. And in this case, this is a good example of something you could have said, well, I'm screwed playing this Thor forever. Ugh. But he said something and good things came from it. So that's what I think I learned from this one. Thor: The Dark World wasn't a horrible movie. It was an okay movie. It just wasn't that great. I didn't care for it too terribly much. I did some research on it, and it appears to be that a lot of people weren't that into making it either. And I think it somewhat shows. And that's why I'm giving Thor: The Dark World a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. But hey guys, you don't have to stop here. The MCU playlist right there, you can continue learning from movies, TVs, and documentaries. Choose that playlist right there. Or you can choose that random video that they're choosing right there for you. But either way, you can continue learning from films, movie, and documentaries.